We are following a developing story out of China. Beijing hit with a second wave of the coronavirus, the fresh outbreak exceeding 100 new cases and forcing authorities to close schools again and reinstate a citywide lockdown. The news could have major impact on U.S. companies with big exposure to China. Dom Chu's over at the wall with the key names to watch. Dom.
I mean, Melissa, it's this world's second biggest economy, so they do a lot of business with American companies. And so we combed through annual reports and took a look at last year, which companies had what kind of exposure to those sales numbers in China. Now, these numbers do include sometimes China specifically or the Greater China region, which could include Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, and areas around them as well. So take a look at these numbers. Tiffany and Company, we know they're in the middle of a possible agreement to be merged here with LVMH. They get roughly 36% of their total revenue from China. Apple in the Greater China region, again, gets about 17% of their total revenues. We know Nike has a very large market in China. Roughly 16% of their business comes from China in that Greater China region there. Many semiconductor stocks make the list, but Micron's one of those headliners, about 15% of their sales from China. And then Boeing. Aerospace giant. We know that them and Airbus do a lot of business there. Boeing gets about 7.5% of their business there as well. This is obviously an incomplete list, but it gives you an idea, Melissa, of the types of big name companies in the United States that have a good amount of exposure to China. We'll keep an eye on them, just like we did during the trade war and trade negotiations over the last several years. Back over to you.
Yep, it's all the same basket of stocks. Dom, thanks so much. Dom Chu. We bring this up because we're trading here in the United States as if it's all over, right? But you see lockdowns again in China, and you got to wonder, is that going to impact the S&P 500 companies here that were so dependent on growth in China? We've seen this story again and again, Tim. And Dom mentioned the trade war, the initial wave of the coronavirus, and then possibly here yet again.
Yeah, but I think when I'll talk about Nike, which was one of the companies we got some of the first data points on China reopening. We were more, glass half full. I know that term's been used already tonight, so let's stay with it. In terms of Nike bringing back and getting back to 70% of sales in China pretty quickly, I think Nike bulls will ultimately shrug their shoulders on downgrades that I think have been put into the stock on Asia and EMEA. And to be clear, global sales for Nike are critical, although the U.S. market's really been the core of understanding where that company can re-rate. But I think it's the digital sales mix that gives people a lot of confidence in the stock, and they're getting closer to 50-50 on DTC. And I think that's going to continue to support Nike. I'm long the stock, full disclosure, but I would not be running on some weaker data points that I think are ones that we're looking past anyway. Weaker
data points meaning the lockdowns out of Beijing. So we're trading on hope,
yes, and
for China exposure as well. And this is happening around the world, Karen. Can you wrap your head around that?
Yeah. I mean, I accept that it's happening. I just feel like, how much do you pay for hope? I feel like we're paying a pretty full price for hope already. The alternative, though, which is why the Fed is doing it, where else do you go, right? So they said they'll be at zero for... They're not even thinking about it. So given that we don't have an alternative, this is the outcome that they want.
Yeah. And Guy, of course, we had McDonald's trading higher today on stronger than expected U.S. same-store sales. McDonald's, of course, has a huge exposure to China. So does Starbucks. So does Yum.
Yeah. Well, as does Starbucks. It's interesting you mentioned Starbucks, as I just had it up. I mean, Starbucks, you really got to close above 80, I think, to take the next leg higher. And I hear what you're saying about McDonald's, but I want to just point one thing out. Sometimes an individual stock sort of could tell a story, and you were away at this time, but I remember I think it was March 18th, and Wynn Resorts traded down to $35, I think, on that day, closed at 43, and we were talking to Brian Sullivan that night. We said, if you're looking for a glimmer of hope or green shoots, which is a term I hate, take a look at Wynn Resorts, which sort of bucked the trend today. And if you look, that sort of has been outpacing the market ever since, until recently, when that stock topped out at 108. Look at it now. I think it's actually trading below 90. So, I think Wynn sort of showed us the way in mid-March. Maybe Wynn is showing us the way now in mid-June. It's just something I think the market should really focus on because it's a name we talk about a lot.
Now, do you hate green shoots because of, you hate Happy Hump Day and the gobble gobble, that sort of thing? Yes. Or do you hate green shoots, like the concept of green shoots, like, rays of sunshine?
No,
hope?
It's the term.
Okay.
That climbing a wall of worry, green shoots, Happy Hump Day, how was your turkey day, gobble gobble.
All right.
new normal. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can go on. I mean, I could do an entire 1-hour show by myself on things that infuriate me.
You can
but,
do
you
that
know.
at 6 p.m.
Don't.
In the meantime, let's check out
forward to it.
shares of Norwegian Cruise Lines accelerating its losses in the after-hour session. The company canceling sailings through at least the end of September. Some voyages in New England and Canada canceled through October. Shares of other cruise lines falling in sympathy. Steve Grasso, you know, we had the green shoot of dexamethasone, and all these stocks were higher on the session, and then we have this, which just sort of, squashes those green shoots.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one. You know, even though I think people will get on domestic flights, they will literally get on and hold their nose, you know, with a mask on their nose. They'll get on, they'll fly 2, 3, 4 hours, and then they'll be outside someplace in a state where things will be a lot better, and maybe they could breathe. But I think it's tough to look at the cruise line and think you've recovered. I've been on on cruises. I know you have as well. I think they will recover one day. But I think they're all blanketed. They're all down 55 to 65%. So it's sort of, you got to wait till you get some traction. This is one where you almost have to wait for a real credible therapy, a real credible vaccine. Then they're all going to rip. So I think you could be nibbling and buying some now, but that return on investment might take a number of months, not a number of days.